that.
Can you send it directly to me, Oliver?
Actually, I just did it. I'm good. I figured it out for you.
Okay.
No worries.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, Donna, you should be good to go.
Thanks, Eliza. Okay, you should see my screen now. You're getting the slides? Perfect. Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Would have liked, obviously, to have come physically back to Halifax again, but hopefully we can do that in 2021. So as Eliza said, my name is Donna Cagney. I'm the Policy Director at Ocean Energy Europe. We're the trade association for the sector in Europe. We have over 110 members, and they're a mixture of project developers, technology developers, utilities, research institutes, universities, national and regional authorities, and we're all working together as a coalition to get ocean energy to the point of industrial rollout and to have Europe powered by blue energy. So I'm just going to give an overview of developments in ocean energy over the past year. And to be quite frank, ocean in 2020, notwithstanding the wider developments, has been a really positive year for ocean energy in Europe. We have a real sense of momentum and a real sense that the hard work we've been doing over the last number of years is really starting to pay off. And part of this is because of a fundamental change in the policy framework that we operate within. So I put up this slide of the European Green Deal. So you may or may not be familiar with it, but basically we got a new European Commission towards the end of last year, and they gave themselves a mission of looking towards 2050, making Europe entirely carbon neutral at that time, but also transforming European society more fundamentally. So they want to create a Europe that's not just decarbonized, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, climate neutral by 2050, but also protects human life, the local environment as well, and also does more in terms of the economy as well, so helping European companies do sustainable exports, so making Europe a leader in green technology. And then finally, what needs to be done in a just and inclusive way, ensuring a just transition, because if you don't bring the people along with you, then you're not going to be able to decarbonize. So quite a grand transformative vision. What's that got to do with ocean energy? You may ask yourself. Well, quite a lot, in fact. If we look at the characteristics of ocean energy, I mean, obviously we fit in with the decarbonization, not just in terms of the raw decarbonized power we can supply, but also how we can support other variable renewables on the grid, like wind, like solar. That's because of tidal's predictability and waves complementarity with wind. So we're hitting that first climate neutrality button. We're also potentially for Europe a great source of sustainable exports as well. And European ocean energy developers are at the forefront of this. The European Commission has recognized Europe as being a leader in ocean energy. And there's also been a few export projects also being taken off already. And obviously Canada and Nova Scotia is a great example of that. So ocean energy is hitting that second button in terms of sustainable exports as well. We like to put this picture, and I guess it'll make sense to those of you who know the sector closely. This is a nice empty vista. Well, in fact, no, it's not. It's a tidal power plant. This is a Maygen project. There's 6 megawatts underneath this vista, powering homes as we speak. So this is something that citizens in the area, they don't see. So there's no visual impact. All the evidence to date in the environment is that there's no significant negative impact on the local environment, although we know there needs to be more monitoring done on that to confirm and establish exactly what the story is. So we're helping in terms of protecting human life in the local environment as well. So local citizens, they don't see the machines. What they do see is the jobs. By our estimations, if we reach 100 gigawatts of deployment, that's about 400,000 jobs in Europe by 2050. And a majority of those will be in those coastal regions where the resource is. So we're helping with that just transition as well. We're bringing people along. So that means that we fit really nicely into the Europe that is going to be delivered over the coming decade. And we're exactly what's needed. And that sounds very high level, but it is translating through into direct supportive policies. And a great example of this is something that the European Commission is working on at the moment, which is a new strategy for offshore renewables, which is due to be released, in fact, on the 18th or 19th of November. So this is something we've been working on for the last year, essentially. It's really coming to fruition now. And this can really be a really fundamental supportive policy for getting the technology to the next stage of development. So with this momentum this year, we really felt we needed to capitalize on it and to have a clear vision as to what we can do with the momentum, what we can do with this newfound confidence, and what we can deliver by the end of the decade. We pulled this together into a publication, the 2030 Ocean Energy Vision, which we released about a month ago now at this stage. It looks at wave, it looks at tidal, it looks at where the technology is now, and it also says how the technology is going to evolve by the end of the decade in terms of deployments, in terms of costs, and in terms of supply chains as well. And just to pick out some of the headline figures, in terms of where we are with tidal stream today, well, we've got a number of different developers, and it's really those tidal farms that are driving progress. So I'm just putting some images of the technology here. You'll probably be fairly familiar with these players. They're looking at going into that. They all have Canadian projects in the Bay of Fundy. And I think the striking thing here is, you know, although there's different strategies, floating versus bottom mounted, big versus small, et cetera, fundamentally, it's the same technology. We've reached convergence. And one of the outputs of this is a graph that's very similar to the one that Oliver showed for his own device. This is an aggregate figure for all tidal energy production across Europe over the last 15 years and how it's grown. I think the headline figure is not how big it is today, but it's the trend. It's growing almost exponentially. And we're hoping we expect to see that trend continue over the coming years with more deployments as well. And hopefully we can add Canadian data to that as well in the coming years. But this clearly said to us that ocean energy and tidal stream is ready for industrial rollout. It's ready for really getting into those gigawatts of deployments. Wave is a few years behind. I'm showing a few pictures of some of the leading developers. Well, I suppose the obvious difference between here and tidal is that these are really quite different devices. We're going to really need to see that same convergence that we've seen with tidal stream for wave. And we know there's only going to be one or two designs, 3 maybe max, that will really make it to industrial rollout. And that's where the sector is going to have to focus all its resources and all its attention. And that means that this race to come out with full-scale working prototypes deployed in open sea conditions for long periods of time, that race is quite fierce at the moment because it's quite clear what the markets are for wave and it's just for the developers that are most successful to capitalize on that. In terms of the markets for wave, we know where they're going to be at a large utility scale in Europe. We know that because these jurisdictions have told us. They come out with national energy and climate plans. And Ireland, Portugal and Spain have been very ambitious in terms of the megawatts they want deployed between now and 2025, so 5 years away. We also know that there's going to be a lot of applications for wave energy, often offshore applications and structures. So offshore oil and gas platforms previously, aquaculture is another example, autonomous monitoring and drones and so on. And the proof here really is these companies, which are multi-billion euro companies, former oil and gas or still in oil and gas, that are really trying to pivot. And all of these 4 companies have taken increasing interest and investment in wave energy over the last couple of years because they can see where the future and they can see where it's heading and they want to be a part of it as well. Just a final thing on the markets for wave, floating wind is a real opportunity for us and our wave developers are already seeing how they can exploit it. A couple of different ways. Some of them are building devices which are both combined platforms for floating wind and wave. Others are focused on creating components because of their history of innovation in this space. They have a lot of parts or components or subsystems which they can contribute, moorings and kind of floating structures being the obvious example as well. But it's also the case that developers are looking how they can co-locate their wave devices with floating wind farms. They can use the same infrastructure and they can give more balanced aggregate power. And in the longer term, this can make these projects have a really compelling return on investment possibilities. So that's where we are. Where are we going to be in 2030? Well, we broke it down into the 2 technologies, and this is what we produced. By tidal stream in 2030, we're confident that we can have 2.4 gigawatts of tidal stream deployed globally. Now, if you're not into your megawatts and your gigawatts and your kilowatts, that's more or less just over 2 million homes powered by ocean energy by 2030. Our study, which is done by a European Association for European Decision Makers, says that 93% of that capacity will be deployed in European waters. But this is the one figure where I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. And I suppose maybe this is an opportunity to throw down the gauntlet and to say that, there's plenty of opportunities and a huge amount of activity happening in Canada as well. So prove me wrong on that figure, I would say. And then in terms of bringing the costs down, this is based on the same analysis that Oliver showed in his previous slide. It's just converted into euros. With this figure, we can get down to about 90 euros a megawatt hour. I just checked before the call what that is in terms of Canadian dollars. I believe it's about 140 Canadian dollars. So bringing us down into that competitive space, a bit more to go, but when you add in the predictability, it starts to become a very interesting proposition. We also have fleshed out what that would look like in terms of the deployments across Europe. I won't go into the details, but I think it's going to be utility scale at those really sites that have the concentrated tidal stream and the largest flows. But we're also going to see, interestingly, they're starting to exploit some of those lower flow, lesser energy sites with improved technology and tidal kites as well. And of course, there will be exports to markets such as Canada, Indonesia, and Japan as well. Wave in 2030, well, as we said, it's 5 years behind, so the deployments will be correspondingly lower. About half a gigawatt deployed by 2030, so about 500,000 homes more or less powered. Majority of it in European waters, but reflecting the fact that there's so many different markets for Wave globally, both geographically and in terms of applications. Deployments are going to be a lot more spread over. And that's going to bring the costs down to about 110 euros a megawatt hour, or according to my figures, 170 Canadian dollars. And those deployments, they're going to be a little bit more scattered, reflecting the nature of the resource and the applications. The one final point I'd say here is that this looks a lot less impressive than the tidal deployments, but a lot of the hard work will be done by 2030, and we've gotten on that path towards exponential growth as well. And there's certain characteristics of Wave, notably the resource, that means there can be a really accelerated deployment post-2030 as well. So definitely not one to discount at all. This is the supply chain. It's for a European supply chain. It's based on what's happening at the moment in terms of what companies have managed to get ocean energy contracts already, the combination of those countries that have supply chains that are complementary, the obvious ones like wind, the less obvious ones like aerospace and car manufacturing. I won't go into the details of the map. The kind of the key learning for me, or the takeaway, is that there's quite a lot of opportunities for those regions that want to take them. There's deployment opportunities all across the continent because there's resource all along the coastline of the continent. But there's also opportunities for heavy manufacturing along coastal areas, cutting steel, creating floating platforms, repositioning of shipbuilding and naval architects and so on. And there's also opportunities for more specialized precision manufacturing. Some of that does seem to go to industrial bases which are pre-existing and have those supply chains, but we're also seeing our regions that are the most bullish about ocean energy really doing what they can to bring that extra value add to their regions as well. So there's a huge amount to play for here as well. I said this is a European example, but these principles are equally applicable, I think, to Canada as well. Delivering on the vision, and then I'll finish up with that because that's a nice vision for 2030, but how do we get there? Well, there's been a huge amount spoken and written about industrial rollout, a lot of consultants' reports and expert committees and recommendations. For us, it boils down to a pretty simple dynamic. The more we deploy, the more we can lower costs. And the more we can lower costs, the more we can deploy. This works for ocean energy. We know that already. This shows how the cost of energy has coming down for wave and tidal and how it'll continue to do so. The tidal data is the exact same as Oliver's. It's coming from the same analysis. It's just in euros and 2016 prices. The wave is a complementary analysis we did based on the latest data from wave devices. I mean, you can look into the details of this if you want. If you're looking for the more high-level picture, all you need to know is what's happened with ocean energy and what's happening with ocean energy is exactly the same thing as what's happening with wind and solar. It's the exact same story, and we're seeing the exact same dynamics. One of the great things about, having those technologies before us to follow on is that we know exactly what we do need to do in terms of reaching deployment and getting those costs down. There needs to be clear and ambitious market signals. We need to be able to reassure investors that there is a market that's worth putting their money into that will pay back in the coming years. We need to unlock the next phase of deployments, those demonstration projects. It's a combination of revenue support like you have in Nova Scotia, and also a range of grants and financial instruments. And then the final point is to continue that technology push. So we see it with offshore wind, gigawatts that are installed, but those developers are still using their balance sheets to put money back into the next generation and the next iteration. We need to do the same. With all these deployments we're doing at these projects, all the learnings we get from the ocean, we need to bring it back to the lab, and we need to bring it to the test sites, and we need to integrate it into the next iteration of ocean energy devices, which are more performant, more powerful, and more efficient as well. I'll just finish off with this slide before I hand it back to you, Eliza. Where is this momentum going to take us? Well, we have a pretty clear vision now. In the next 5 years, we want to see 100,000 homes in Europe powered by ocean energy. That's 100 megawatts. That's going to set the path for 3 gigawatts of wave and tidal globally by 2030. So those are the deployments I just presented for wave and tidal. And then by 2050, we'll be getting up to 100 gigawatts in Europe alone. So really starting to power Europe with blue energy from the waves and the tides by then. So I'll leave it there. Thanks very much, and I'll hand the